And good morning, and welcome to our live streams today on Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. I'm Ted Langdell, and we are your Yuba-Sutter.live host for this morning. A fine way to end spring and jump into summertime. Today we have the 9 a.m. Yuba Water Agency regular meeting, and 6 o'clock tonight, the Marysville City Council regular meeting, and then simultaneously the 6 o'clock Yuba City Council regular meeting. That will be on a separate stream. Our Tuesday government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake and by the City of Marysville's 2023 Peach Festival happening Friday, July 14th and Saturday, July 15th in historic downtown Marysville. More details at MarysvillePeachFestival.com. We'll be with
recording in progress.
Water Agency in just...
Good morning.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at PlumasLakeSelfStorage.com. And our Yuba-Sutter.live live streams this month are presented in part by historic downtown Marysville's Marysville Peach Festival, July 14th and 15th. That's Friday and Saturday in historic downtown Marysville. And as we move along, let's head for the Yuba Water Agency meeting coming up right now on your Yuba-Sutter.live.
Motion passes. Excellent. We'll move on to item 4 under discussion items. Consider approval of the South Yuba River Citizens League request for an additional $12,960 to bring 270 fourth grade students from Wheatland School District and Rio del Oro Elementary School in Plumas Lake on the Salmon Expedition Tour this fall, which is a year ahead of schedule. Creighton, good morning.
Good morning. How are you all doing? My name is Creighton Avila. I'm project manager here at the agency. As Director Bradford said, we are here today to just move up a year when it comes to the 3-year plan that you awarded in a grant to a circle. And again, it's to bring, it's for $13,000 to bring 270 new fourth graders on the river. Any questions?
What's the total number of fourth graders?
So right now it's 1,303.
Oh.
And so next year, they're going to strive to have every single.
I'd like to approve if the 1 or 2 board members can assist, accompany them down the river.
Gary and I did it, but I think I've aged out.
You're not in 5th grade this year? I said you're not in 5th grade. You are in 5th grade.
No, we were on a 4th grader route. Unfortunately, they helped me in and out of the route, but that was still there. So it'll be embarrassing to be going
They helped me in and out of the raft.
Maybe I'll wait till we do your point.
Okay. All right. Move to approve.
Okay, I have a first. Is there a second? Okay, I have a first and a second. Any public comment on this item? Okay, I would just say I'm really excited to move these schools up, and so thank you to staff for working with them, and thank you hopefully to the board for your approval. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any approved? Great. Thank you.
Chairman, on the rafting, we also do the fish in the classroom. Could you kind of give us an update on that?
Good morning, BD Cordell, Communications Manager. Charlie, the best answer I can give you is that it's continuing and it is strong. The volunteers who lead the Fish in the Classroom program are continuing to do so. We have, I'm not sure about this year, but we typically have 17 or 18 classrooms, I think, that are involved. And we still fund the field trips, so they are able to raise the fish in the classroom, and then we pay for the field trips for them to go out to the river and release them into the river.
A little bit more people that haven't heard it before about what fish in the classroom.
Sure. So the fish are raised at the hatchery in Orville, as the eggs are harvested there, and then the teachers are provided a cooler and a tank to raise the fish in, and they start as eggs and they go through all the fish life cycles until they are old enough to be released into the river. And so the kids, it's all different grades. Some we have as young as kindergarten and first graders, but we have even some 8th grade students that are raising the fish in their classroom. It just depends on the teacher and their passion level for participating in it, because it's very kind of a high maintenance program, but they love it. And so they do it. And the kids get really excited about it. They learn every single part of the fish life cycle, and then they get to release the fish at the river. And it's a neat experience. We have a video on our website that tells a little bit more about it, and I would encourage anybody to watch that video because it's kind of sweet. The kids tend to name the fish, and then they give them a little pep talk, and they put them in their little cup, and they say, "I hope you don't get eaten," and then they release them into the river. It's very sweet.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I also see that we have Aaron from Circle on Zoom, so just want to thank Aaron for coming today and for your partnership on this program. So, okay. We will move on to item 5. Consider adoption of resolution 2023-09, authorizing the general manager or designee to prepare and file a CEQA notice of exemption for the Lake Francis Dam Spillway Crest Rehabilitation Project. Good morning, Jacob.
Morning, board. Thank you for having me. Jacob Vanrion, Environmental Manager for the Water Agency. As Gary just said, this is a board agenda item to adopt a resolution authorizing the general manager or his designee, again, that's me, to prepare and file a CEQA notice of exemption for the Lake Francis Dam Spillway Crest Rehabilitation Project. That's a mouthful. Lake Francis Dam impounds Lake Francis and Dobbins. A series of ground penetrating radar and boroscope investigations in 2017 and confirmed some suspicions that we had that there was voiding going on underneath the spillway crest. Ultimately, this sort of issues what led to the spillway failure at Orville in 2017. So it is a serious issue. A alternatives analysis in 2021 determined that filling the void with approximately 90 cubic yards of concrete was the best way to resolve the issue. The concrete will be pumped into approximately 12 8-inch holes drilled into the spillway crest, and it'll be poured in phases to ensure proper compaction and consolidation of the concrete. This sort of work falls into a CEQA notice of exemption, CEQA guidelines 15301. That's a categorical exemption for maintenance of existing facilities, which this falls perfectly into. So the next step to finish the CEQA process for this is to adopt this resolution, and assuming that you do, I will file the notice of exemption with the county clerk within the next 5 days. That incurs a $50 filing fee, and then also today when you approve the next fiscal year's budget, there is an item for approximately $400,000 for this construction. With that, if you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, any comments from the public? Okay, don't see any.
Approved.
Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next up is item 6, consider waiving an annual 2.5% rate increase surface water of the Yuba County Water Agency Act. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning, Mr. A request from the member units to forego an increase in cost to surface water supplies delivered. These are our 8 member unit irrigation districts that are applying for this or requesting this waiver. And so per the 2016 water supply agreements with each of the member units, a 2.5% annual increase to the surface water rates is subject to review each year and taking into account the revenue generated from hydropower production in the previous year. So right now, our delivered water to the member units, well, there's 2 elements. There's the contracted water. It's $2.50 per acre foot, and that applies to all the water that's in their contract. And then an additional $1.20 cost per acre foot for water delivered. So that's what we charge right now. A 2.5% increase would be equal to 9 cents per acre foot additional. So this is a routine request that has been approved every year since 2017. And at the end of the day, it helps keep the water rates low to our farmers. And so it warrants a staff recommendation to approve.
Great, thank you, Ryan.
Happy to answer any questions.
I would so move, but under discussion, I would like to point out that there's language in the original act that the benefit of the water to the people, and it relates, as he said, to power production. And obviously, since this year was our highest production ever in revenue, I think that this is a very normal request.
Okay, is there a second?
I second. To the chair, is there a member unit here? Is there any even members here?
There are several member units here.
Okay. Would you like to say something?
Morning, Mike Felice. I represent the member units. This is something we've been doing since 2017. Our contract's renewed. When the Yuba Act was first formed, a lot of the irrigation districts, Charlie Matthews is aware of this, were very involved in the Yuba Act. And this language was put in the Yuba Act because of the fact that they could see that power revenue someday would come back to this county and come back to those partners that help Yuba through those times. So your future, I mean, your board members before that came before you realized that, and so did the irrigation districts. So that's why that was put into the Yuba Act, to be asked if power generation was to ever make income for the county, which what Ryan just said, I think you've made quite a bit this year, and I agree with what Charlie Matthews said. This should be an automatic yes. So any questions for me?
Well, I'd like to thank you for all the dollars that you're putting into scholarships for our children, and thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
While you're still there, also people that had original water rights, Allwood, Cordova, BVID, before this contract came up, they did not pay for the water. So like in Allwood's case especially, they never paid anything to the agency. So when this contract was signed, the agency put this language in to charge. So I wanted to make the point that for the first, 40, almost 50 years, the original water rights holders didn't pay anything to the agency. So there was discussion then about why they should. And I remember our manager saying that we don't pay for our water in a presentation here a few meetings back. I was going to get him aside and reiterate this part to it. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie.
Any additional board comments or questions? Okay, I just wanted to follow up on some of the comments that have already been made. So I certainly appreciate the member unit's partnership with the agency. It's really important for groundwater management, as well as our ability to fulfill the terms in the Yuba Accord. And I also appreciate what you've been giving back to the community through the Yuba River Endowment. And certainly, as Director Matthews pointed out, given our revenue in this past year, I think this is an easy decision for us to make. So appreciate you bringing the request forward. And with that,
I think you have something.
No, I'm just here to answer questions. Yeah.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Motion passes. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will move on to item 7. Consider approval of, I'm not going to read the whole thing. Essentially, consider approval of the budget. And Curtis, we'll let you give the presentation for that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning. All right, there we go. Good. We're sharing, right, Manny? Good. All right. Good morning, Curtis Crawford, Director of Finance. That might be the first time I remember to say that before starting my presentation. So it took me 7 years, but we got there. Yeah, so this is the budget for fiscal year 2024 and the projected budget for fiscal year 2025. We're going to keep a similar format as we've seen in years past. I'll quickly go through the most current monthly financials that we have available. That'll be April 2023. These are the same financials that the ABP saw. We dove into this quite a bit. The meeting took the better part of 2 hours. I'll try to keep this one under 1 hour. There's only 75 slides, so we should be able to do that. So with that, let's jump right in. First page here, this is the agency-wide summary sheet. The purpose of this is to put consolidated financial information on one page that's hopefully somewhat easy to absorb. To go over the format quickly, going from left to right, we have a couple of years of budget versus actuals back to fiscal year ending 2021. On the far right, we have actuals through April 2023, so 10 months of the fiscal year compared to the full final budget for fiscal year 2023. From top to bottom, we have revenue at the top, split by Power Systems Fund and General Fund. The expenses are there in the center. Again, Power Systems in General. We'll combine those on one row. And then down below that final line is the net effect on reserves. So with that format, I'll go through some of the key numbers. We'll focus on the far right, actuals through April 2023. Power system revenue, we were just talking about it, 159 million against a budget of 81.9 million. I think we know the story there. We've heard a little bit about this. Prices are quite high, and we had quite a bit of precipitation, so we were able to generate to capture those high prices. And even some of our additional products, such as resource adequacy, we've seen that price elevate over the last few years. And we'll carry that into the fiscal year 2024 budget that we'll talk about here in a little bit. On the general fund side, there was a little bit of water transfer, but we did see an uptick in interest income, particularly the second half of this fiscal year. So we are at 20 million against a budget of 24.2 million. So we're right on budget, but we didn't really get the mix of sources correct. What's in the $24 million budget is really incoming grant revenue, which we budget quite aggressively. We were fairly conservative on interest income, but we did see some rate hikes, and we benefited from those rate hikes because we had a significant amount of power systems revenue that we were able to sweep into the county pool and put those dollars to work. We also experienced an uptick in the money market account with River Valley Community Bank. As of last week, they're up to 2.4% in that account. So that's quite a bit higher than what we've seen in the past few fiscal years. So it looks like we're right on budget and we nailed it. We got a little lucky. The mix of sources was just shifted a little bit. Moving down to expenses on power systems, we are about 23 million against a budget of 42.1 million. We're trending under budget more than anticipated. We aim for roughly 90% of budget to leave that 10% of contingency on the table. But we're coming in under budget quite a bit on capital improvement projects. So you'll see a few of those shift into future years. On the general fund side, we're 43.7 million against a budget of 58.8. It trends about what we expect. We're seeing an uptick in disbursements from the Community Impact Grant Program. We'll talk a little bit about that. So expenses all told through April 2023 is 66.7 against a budget of 100.9. We're going to come in under budget a little bit, around the 80% mark. So it's a little more under budget than we anticipated. Again, we like to leave just the contingency on the table, but we're seeing those capital improvement projects kind of shift forward. Like the silver lining there is those dollars are now invested at higher interest-bearing accounts. So we're putting those dollars to work while we're not using them. Net effect on reserve through April 30th, 2023, $112.4 million will be contributed to our reserve designations. As you guys know, we're working on a reserve policy update that will come to you as soon as we have a draft ready to go. It's taking a little bit longer to do a draft because it is quite a bit of a revamp. We are working with S&P to obtain basically a practice credit rating. And one of the items that they did have some feedback on was our reserve policy to really split it between power systems and general fund. So we're working on jumping through those hoops in an effort to obtain the best credit rating possible should we need to go out and issue bonds, just to make sure that the debt is as cheap as possible. That $112.4 million would bring us to $341 million in reserves after the 229 balance at 6/30/2022. A little bit more detail. This is Power Systems revenue month by month compared over the last few fiscal years. As you see, the current fiscal year bars are a lot taller than the rest of them. It's a very technical review of the data there. Prices have been through the roof, particularly in January. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that, or nor will we again. That was our highest month ever at $33.3 million. Even the spring months, which we were watching closely because we did have quite a bit of snowpack and some mild temperatures, we were mindful of potential negative pricing. We did not see it. April at $17.6 million, and even currently in the month of June, despite mild weather, we have enough generation, even with slightly depressed prices, that June will not be a poor month either. So there's been a very strong revenue year, and we'll see that continue in the fiscal year 2024. On the general fund side, this slide is just looking at operating income, which is just going to be our water transfer. So it's not as large as we saw in the prior fiscal year. We did see a little bit of surface water transfer, particularly in the month of April, that $327,906.25. That amount will, based on the prior agenda item, be the same next year as well. So that's 50% of the project-based supply that's in the water supply agreements. You've seen it's been the same the last few years. That will now continue. A little foreshadowing the fiscal year 2024 budget, there will not be a surface water transfer in that budget. Looking at expenses, we're at $8.3 million in the month of April. It's a little bit higher. In March, we were at $7.6 million. That was also a little bit higher. What we're seeing there is the impact of the Community Impact Grant Program. We're a couple of years into this program now. It's been a nice structure. We've sought out a lot of quality projects, and we've moved them through our program. So those grant agreements are signed and the work is underway. As you guys know, we have the investment target of $10 million each fiscal year. But those projects could take multiple years. So what we're seeing is that the scope is slowly being completed for those projects that may have been awarded this grant a year and a half ago. So we're seeing a lot of disbursements come through now. So you'll look at the fiscal year 2024 budget. Those line items for the Community Impact Grant Program will sum greater than $10 million. That's taking into the account the prior commitments in the Community Impact Grant Program and the ongoing work as those partners complete those scopes of work in those various mission areas. This chart is showing the split between agency specific expenses and grant expenses, with that dark blue portion on top representing the Community Impact Grant Program disbursements. You see that's been increased. I think that will be a common theme in perpetuity as this grant program is now established, and there's a lot of these projects underway. Particularly in April, we saw $2.5 million for drainage work in Yuba County, the bulk of it being the Feather River Boulevard and North Beale Road public works projects. Monthly results. This is the slide that plots 2 data points per month. Revenue is in blue, expenses are in red. This is the first year where we've seen revenue clear each month, clear the expenses for each month. and by a wide margin in some cases. We'll look at April, 19.3 million of agency-wide revenue against agency-wide expenses of 8.4 million. So in spite of the uptick in community impact grant program disbursements, the strong revenue year has allowed us to contribute additional dollars to those reserve designations. Same theme here, they're looking at reserves. This is the rolling chart. Final budget conservatively was projecting a little over 5 million contributed to our reserve designations. Much stronger than anticipated revenue year, came in under budget power system capital improvement projects, and overall under budget and agency expenses. That gets us to 112.4 that contributed to the 229 that's currently in reserves to get us to roughly 341. That 341 will be what we look to designate across those reserve designations. I don't anticipate a change in the designations. I think those buckets will remain the same and defined the same, but we'll right size them. It's been a couple of years since we worked the methodology to make sure that those buckets are sized right. And then we'll create some language that really splits what's for power systems and what's for general fund. Really leveraging the work that we've done kind of internally on our capital improvement plans. There's strong capital improvement plans for general fund and power systems. So we'll create a strong link between the reserve policy and those capital improvement plans. That wraps up April financials. So I'll just quickly pause and see if there's any questions on financials for the fiscal year thus far before we take a look at the budget for the next 2 years.
My question was about interest. How much of our money is tied up in long-term, either investments, loans, or products, and how much is available to capture the current interest rates?
It's in the county pool, so it's Dan Mearswell is running that, so it's the same as it's the Yuba County Treasury.
So like 2/3 of it's locked up for a year or whatever plus. Okay,
that's right.
And so it's all in that. Because you mentioned River Valley with 2.4%. I wasn't sure how much was that.
We have been less aggressive sweeping money out of River Valley. Prior to the change to our money market account, the county treasury was a much better option for us. They're currently about the same. If I try to force out what the treasury is going to release in their next quarter, the rates are about the same. So there's roughly 18 million in River Valley Community Bank now. The rest of the reserves, except for what's been loaned out, is in the county treasury.
Thanks.
Any additional questions at this point?
No. All right, so we'll carry on. So we'll take a look at the budget for fiscal year 2024, and we'll compare it to actuals through April 2023 and a couple of prior year actuals. Now, the actuals through April 2023, that's different than I typically present. Typically present the budget, so we're comparing budget to budget. But given the anomalies this year, it felt much more appropriate to compare proposed budget to current year actuals, although through April 2023. So bear that in mind. This slide here focusing on revenue, power system revenue, operating revenue. So that's our power sales. That's the 158.8 million in current year, 145.9 fiscal year 2024. So we'll continue to be strong, really driven by resource adequacy. In fiscal year 2021, resource adequacy made up roughly $22 million of our power systems budget. In calendar year 2024, it's 67 million of the power system revenue budget. So it's tripled in value. That'll somewhat continue. I'm gonna do a little foreshadowing here. Somewhat continue in 2025, but we do have the tunnel outage. But that does kind of raise the floor on revenue despite a 4-month tunnel outage. So we'll take a look at that. But in the long range forecast in years 3 through 5, I do back off the RA values, not counting on those. So if they do remain strong, the long range forecast is going to end up a little bit stronger than what it currently is presented. But anticipating something's got to give. We can't be tripling RA values every couple of years. Non-operating revenue of power systems is not really material. It was back in fiscal year 2021. That was the final FEMA storm damage reimbursement payment. So we're happy to not see any non-operating revenue in power systems. But we will jump down and look at general fund where non-operating revenue is far more important. We're at 23 million in the proposed budget of fiscal year 2024. Two big components there, interest income being elevated and having more cash in the pool and River Valley going to work at a higher rate. and continuing to aggressively budget the incoming grant revenue that we have. I think we're up to 14 or 15 incoming grants now, a substantial amount of dollars coming in to offset some project-related expenses in our various mission areas. So that's driving the $23 million number. We talked a little bit about operating revenue being our water sales. Just $557,000. That's just the member unit water supply agreements. There will not be a core transfer. All right, power system expenses, similar concept. We're going to look at trends and call out the differences from year to year. Still using actuals through April 2023. The categories on the left is the same structure as the income statement. I've consolidated them up into their headers. As you guys look at the income statement, there are several lines within these sections that make up what is the power systems maintenance budget or operations budget. Same on general fund. We'll look at that in a minute. On the maintenance, you see a 76% increase. That's obviously worth calling out. We had a down year at 9.6 million even through April 2023. But that 17.7 million in fiscal year 2025 was driven by an Our House sediment removal project. That's roughly a $6 or $7 million project that is just maintenance. It's not something that we capitalize because we're just removing dirt from behind the diversion dam. Something similar going on in fiscal year 2024, the spoils pile stabilization project. That spoils pile from the original tunnel construction at the penstock will be underway this fiscal year. Again, we're kind of removing dirt or stabilizing dirt, so there's nothing really to capitalize at the end of that, so it causes an uptick in our maintenance expenses. Operations is up a little bit. We do have some succession planning going on with some trainees that have converted to full-time operators, so we see a little bit of an uptick in the operations budget. Remember, the operations budget, overwhelming majority of that is the operators themselves at the desk working 24/7, 365. Capital projects, that's the biggest change in the budget. We're at 7.3 million, again, trending under what we projected in a current fiscal year budget, 627%. But really, we're up 52.9 million, almost 53 million in capital improvement projects. Driven by a couple of large projects that I'll actually jump to. Power system admin building and warehouse, that alone is 19.75 million in the power systems budget. And tunnel outage prep as we continue to work towards next year's tunnel outage is another 14.2 as we begin procuring those long lead items. Make sure when we go into the tunnel outage, we have everything that we need and it goes off without a hitch. So just jumping back, it was a quieter year in power systems this year. But I think the next couple of years, we're going to see quite a bit of activity in power systems as we work on those fairly large capital improvement projects. One positive note is we're not seeing the routine operating expenses escalate at an unusual rate. These are capital improvement projects. We're investing into our own assets. So when we see this spike in expenses, it's much easier to swallow because we are just investing back into our infrastructure. Questions on power systems before I jump to general fund? All right, general fund. Same structure from left to right, top to bottom, also same structure. This is the income statement collapsed into their headers. There are several line items in the actual budget documents, the income statement documents that are in the packet. To avoid dragging through each one of those, we'll look at this from the high level. The first one that we'll look at is in administrations, 8.9 through April 23. We're up quite a bit to 12.8. A lot of that is driven by benefits to a certain extent. As you guys know, last year we switched to Aqua JPIA and they had quite a bit of reserves where they were able to buy down the premiums. That's complete. At the same time, healthcare costs are rising. So we're now back kind of more exposed to the market in fiscal year 2024 and beyond. Capital improvement projects, it looks like a 708% increase. That's one downside of using actuals. That budget is basically in the current year budget. It has to slide forward. Those are IT infrastructure projects. And the lead time on equipment is kind of has their hands tied. So there's not a lot of new stuff in the capital project budget and general fund. Those same IT infrastructure projects are going to carry forward into fiscal year 2024, and it does look like they're going to receive the materials they need to complete those next year.
Would you also comment, you have actual April, you also have May and half of June. Maybe if we, instead of putting actual, is projected 23s would give everybody in the future.
Yeah, I think your question is, can we start projecting through 6/30? We're working on that. Before I put a projection out there, I want it to be somewhat accurate and be able to stand behind it. It's tough to project some of these expenses when we're subjected to things like supply chain, or on the power system side, the energy market revenue would be a heck of a time to try to forecast, but mindful of that, and we're working on that. We'd love to move to a monthly budget versus an annualized budget.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. That was admin. We're going to move to water resources. So 3.3 million through April 2023, that uptick to 5.3 million. A couple of things are going on there. The remainder of the Ostrom Road sinkhole repair will be in the 5.2 million. So that's elevated over what we normally see in the water resources budget, as well as some resources to work on the 2025 Accord extension. So those two items are different than the trend for water resources, and that's why we see that budget elevated in fiscal year 2024. We'll look at flood risk reduction activity, where we had 15.1 million in current year. 7.8 million of that 15.1 is related to grant activity. Looking at fiscal year 2024, 19.1 million, where 9.3 million is related to grant activity. This is where we're seeing we have a lot of projects that are underway. We have prior grant agreements that are now working through their scopes. And that's the line item in the budget where we actually see that come through. We'll move on to fishery enhancement. We're at 2.9 million through April 30th, 2023. We're going to see a bit of an uptick to 3.6 million. A good portion of that is related to phase 4 of the Hallwood Habitat Restoration Project. This is a good place to mention that those 14 or 15 incoming grant programs that we have, a couple of those grants are offsetting the Hallwood Habitat Restoration Project. So we see the uptick in expenses, but we saw the uptick in fund as well to offset those expenses. So something to be mindful of. We'll look at relicensing. Not a lot of change in that budget, up modestly. Community water projects. Again, that's driven by Community Impact Grant Program. So you see that escalation from 7.7 in current year actuals up to 15.2, almost 15.3 million in the Community Impact Grant Program. Again, same theme as those projects work their way through. We're going to see those expenses come through the general fund. Now to kind of bring some of these sections to life and bring that income statement to life, we're going to look at a couple of projects that are significant components of the chart I looked at before. I feel like this is a little more visually appealing than the last chart. Trillia Goldfields, this is a representative of a significant grant agreement that we have. I think we just did the amendment up to 10 million for this effort as the local share of various grant agreements that Trillia has captured. So that work is a significant component of the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024, and continuing the Yuba County support local share of ongoing drainage projects. So we saw that 15.3 million. Those water supply grant agreements are shown here, particularly on the Trillia side, and that's explaining the uptick in the general fund budget. That was in flood risk reduction. Sorry, I said water supply, I think. Water resources now. So we talked about Ostrom Road sinkhole repair, driving the water resources budget up a little bit in fiscal year 2024. And again, the Community Impact Grant Program disbursements. This is just a small sample of the various partners that we have now. 50 outgoing grants through that Community Impact Grant Program that we're administering. So there's a lot of work now underway. That's why you're seeing the uptick in disbursements, is these 50 projects are now being completed by our partners. Last but not least, in resource planning, I talked a little bit about the Hallwood Restoration Project. This is phase 4, offset considerably by incoming grants. I think we have 3 different incoming grants funding portions of that project, as well as a significant in-kind contribution from Tykert, as you guys are aware. That concludes a look at just fiscal year 2024. I'm going to jump over to the long-range forecast and pause for any questions you guys might have. All right. Hopefully this is big enough to look at. What's that? Thank you. All right, long-range forecast. So what's nice about the long-range forecast is it maintains the same structure as the agency-wide summary sheet that accompanies each monthly financials. It's more or less the same, so we'll look left to right. We have a couple of years of actuals here in the center, actuals through April 30th, 2023. The proposed budget, which we just talked a little bit about. The projected budget, so that's our second of the 2-year budget. We will take a brief look at that, and then we have years 3, 4, and 5 and beyond. As we know that some things will happen within the next 10 years. We're getting better at what's going to happen in year 5 versus year 7 versus year 8. So more to come. We're looking to extend this to be a 10-year long-range forecast. Top to bottom, more or less the same revenue on top. In the middle, we have expenses now separated: routine operating and non-routine large and capital projects. We want to look at that routine line and confirm that it is not escalating at a rapid pace. That would be a red flag that we would want to dive into. We don't want operating expenses getting out of hand. If we're seeing an uptick in capital improvement projects, again, that's easier to swallow. General funds, the same structure. Down below, I'll move that out of the way for you. Agency combined expenses, net impact on reserves. The reserve rolling total, there's the 341 that we've mentioned through April 30th, 2023. We have loans receivable backed out of our reserve total. We have our no-touch designations in our reserve policy that will back out of our reserve total to get us to our available cash. And that's really the number that a lot of people like to focus on, is what is our available cash after all of this work is completed and we've made the loans and we've preserved our rainy day funds. So I'll hit a couple of highlights now that we have the lay of the land. We'll look at projected budget. I talked a little bit about it. Strong actuals through current year. Strong again next year at 145.9. 87.2 million is assuming relatively strong RA, but still factoring in a 4-month tunnel outage. So that's incredibly strong revenue for the tunnel outage year. This number was much lower before we saw RA triple over the last couple of years. I talked a little bit about backing RA down. That's what I've done going forward. This is much more status quo revenue. We don't really know enough about that to be too aggressive, and the whole theme of this sheet is to be conservative. We designed this sheet to be a tool that provides comfort committing future resources. So we don't want to be too aggressive on telling you what those future resources are going to be. So no one commits anything that's not going to end up being there. So we get increasingly more conservative as the time horizon extends. On the general fund side, in fiscal year budget 2024 and the projected budget for 2025, we're fairly aggressive with the incoming grant revenue because we know what that is. There's not a lot of variables in the incoming grant revenue. We're also fairly aggressive with interest income. We don't expect rates to reverse course and go back to zero. But then again, after years 3 and beyond, we get far more conservative. On general fund revenue, when it comes to water transfers, we take a 10-year average and we really average it out. That's not correct, as we know. It comes in 1 year and you have no water transfers the next year. That's what we're seeing currently. So we smooth it out. It's always going to be wrong. We think that that's the easiest way to communicate the long-range forecast. But do bear that in mind, that there will be some years where water transfer comes in under what's calculated in the long-range forecast.
When you get to tunnel outage for the 24 and 25, you have a total of 64 million.
That's right.
That's the expense.
That's right. So, yeah, good segue. So, routine expenses in the fiscal year 2024 budget and 2025 budget, fairly flat. We move into those large projects, which really moves the needle in our budgets. And one of the biggest one, well, the biggest one is tunnel outage. So there's 19.75 million in the fiscal year 2024 budget. There's another 50.9 million in the actual tunnel outage year. We do expect that to be quite a bit high. The budget that we have placed in 2025 is to fund any scope of work we could encounter. There's some scope of work that isn't going to be 100% defined until the tunnel is actually dewatered and we're in there taking a look at the health of the tunnel. So we fully expect to come in under the 50.9 million, but we won't know that until we actually dewater the tunnel and we're in there. Power system headquarters, we split that 50-50. That'll likely be slightly incorrect. We'll adjust that likely at the December final budget here in a few months. Moving down to general fund, it's really the same concept, routine operating expenses on that row. We'll keep an eye on those and make sure that they do not escalate beyond reason. And when they do escalate, we'll have a reason why. Try to define that for you guys. The non-routine large, again, we're calling out the most important ones. Arc spillway is still on the general fund side until it's constructed and moves to power systems. Fish screening, we have slowed down progress on that a little bit, so that budget has been shifted out a year. We came in under budget in current year on fish screening is kind of slowed down on progress. The Trillium bond payment, that is the payment schedule, so we've maintained that to be flat. Habitat restoration, though, I do like to call out, so it's significant on the expense side, but again, it's heavily offset by incoming grant revenue. And license conditions, those are aggressively forecasted here on the long range forecast. We don't expect to have a new license in fiscal year ending 2026, as this suggests. But again, we want this document to be conservative. We fully anticipate that the financial health is better than this in future years, not worse than this. If it's worse than this, then you run the risk of committing resources today into the future that you don't end up having, and that's not what we're trying to do with this document. A couple of notes. So we've been doing the long range forecast for a couple of years now. 2 years ago, we brought you a long range forecast that had fiscal year budget 2024 at 73 million, and we brought you a budget of 77.6 million. So we're in the ballpark. On the general fund side, there's been some project shifting. So if you look at a 3-year average, we got the 3-year average correct, but it was different in each year. But more or less, we're getting in the ballpark with our forecast. I think we've really enhanced our planning, those capital taking shape. And they satisfy the S&P credit rating folks, and really they're the ones driving the link to the reserve policy, which I think is great. Also presented in prior year long range forecasts is we've had the low point in available cash. That's typically when people look at this document, they're looking for that number. What's the low point in available cash? It's in fiscal year 2026 at 48.2 million. Just a couple of years ago, that number was negative. But prior long range forecasts have had this trajectory correct. That 48.2 million is after a significant amount of the arc spillway is constructed. Again, it's assuming no incoming grant revenue, which we know is very unlikely. But we're getting the trends correct. The magnitude is still heavily influenced by external factors that are just too hard to predict, like rainfall and market prices. But I think this long range forecast is developing and it's maturing and it's becoming a little more sophisticated, and the components in the long range forecast are quite a bit better than they were a couple of years ago.
I have a quick question on the tunnel outage. Are we to the point now where we have come pretty close to actually what the timeline's going to be as to when we're going to start and how long it's going to take and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. So Willie might have more details, but I think it's a 4-month tunnel outage. I think we're getting some traction on procuring those critical components. As you know, that was the last time we postponed the tunnel outage. It was the pinstock shutoff valve. We were concerned about procuring the material to actually get that piece of the tunnel outage done, and that's really the critical component of this tunnel outage. So I think we're gaining confidence, but I think it's October through January is the 4-month window.
We were originally, 2 years ago or a year ago? Would have been this year. This year. Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Tom. Okay, so that's long range forecast. If there's no questions, I'll jump to the salary schedule before we turn it over to the rest of the personnel items. Going once, going twice. All right, salary schedule updated for fiscal year 2024. It includes the 5% general wage increases. You guys remember last year we negotiated a 4-year agreement with the IBEW. For the first 2 years had defined general wage increases at 5%. Following past practice, we have included it in the full salary schedule for the rest of the folks that are even not in the IBEW. In the course of this fiscal year, we'll work on years 3 and 4 for IBEW and the rest of the agency. A couple of other changes to the salary schedule. We now have one salary schedule. The IBEW salary schedule used to be a standalone document. It's an appendix in the MOU. It will remain to be an appendix in the MOU. But we've now melded the two together, so you see all employees on the same salary schedule. I think that makes a lot more sense.
Roll it up a little bit so we can see the whole schedule.
Yeah, are you guys not looking at this?
Yeah, roll it the other way.
Oh, you want to see more of this? Okay, sure. It's also in your packet. Are you looking for something specific, Charlie?
No, just trying to, so everybody could see everything.
Very good. This is a good section to stop at. IBEW, they are not on a step schedule, so you see these grayed out for A through D. We just plugged their rates into step E. So there's any questions as to why that is, that's why. And just looking at the two right columns here, exempt versus non-exempt, are they salary or hourly? And then category of non-bargaining management and IBEW MOU. So that's how we've identified those ones that are now new to the salary schedule. We have changes in yellow. And for that, I think Terry is going to talk about personnel items in the absence of Teresa. Is that right? No? All right, I got it. So admin supervisor, we beefed up the job description. You've seen this job description before. We took another look at it. We think it needed a little bit more, and it did trigger a bit of a salary increase. So we matched it to what we're looking for out of this individual. Business systems administrator, that's a reclass. That current position is business systems analyst. That role has evolved beyond what we even had planned. The incumbent has a lot to do with that. Nicole Vandermeulen has been fantastic. She's really stepped into a lot more project management. So not only being the liaison between IT and the rest of the business functions, but actually managing the project from cradle to grave. So we've reflected that in an updated job description and salary. Construction inspector, construction inspector senior, I believe is a flexibly staffed. There's one or two, I think there's two. Construction inspector is a function that we had contracted out of the last, well, since the beginning of time, but it makes a lot more sense to bring this function in-house. The cost savings will be significant, and we'll have an inspector on the job site that's wearing a Yuba-Sutter logo. It's time for that as we're going to see this uptick in large capital improvement projects. As you saw, just the power system budget alone, up to $53 million of capital improvement projects. We've got a bit of a wave of projects here where the time is right to bring that functionality in-house. Senior construction project manager is similar. These are very large scale capital improvement projects. So this individual would be the internal project manager for things like the tunnel outage, arc spillway, and things of that nature. Director of Resource Planning, as that position has evolved, again, it's right sizing the salary to what's in the job description. So there's a small salary adjustment there to market. Flood risk reduction manager is now a defined standalone job description. This was being performed by one of our general project manager job descriptions, very broad. This is now very focused. And a standalone position with a market-driven salary. Government relations manager / special counsel is an addition. Job description has been revamped to really reflect what that individual is doing. And again, a salary adjustment to match market for those skills that are now in the job description. Organizational development officer. There's a lot of employees. Culture is something that's very important. And we have an individual that will help support some of leadership training activities and things like that. Again, another market-driven salary. Watershed manager. This is a position that's just a small adjustment to a position that already existed. Again, that position was thought to be one thing and has grown as a lot of what happens at the agency does on a little bit more. So we've adjusted that salary to match the skills in that job description. I'll quickly jump over to the personnel allocation chart. I've talked about the positions, but I will show that we have, am I calling headers right? Authorized. So this would bring us up to 119 and a half people. We won't tell that half person who they are. We have 90 and a half people filled and 29 are vacant. Some of those vacancies, though, have been filled. So some of what we're seeing here is the creation of one position, then we fill it and we eliminate the position that individual came out of. So that's a little misleading. And then we have filled a few of these positions that are vacant on this chart. Just at the time of releasing this to the AVP. We've since finished the recruitment process on a few of these. So we don't really have 29 active recruitments, but 119 and a half would be the full time employee headcount with an approved budget. So with that, I'll pause for questions. But that's all I have for fiscal year 2024 and 2025.
I'll just say I don't have a question, but you covered a lot of questions in the committee meeting, and I appreciate your thoroughness and I know it's not an easy thing to put together, especially when you're looking out a year or two, and I appreciate you always doing your best to get it right.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any additional questions?
I would like to say the same thing. And I'm a farmer, and these numbers are large. We even discussed, having an outside consultant look to see if we're doing things right. But after the review and time and thought, I appreciate very much what the staff has done. I think they've done an outstanding job of trying to explain where they are and where we're going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess we need to take public comment and do a motion and a vote on this. So first we'll start with public comment. Any public comment on the budget? Do not see any. Is there a motion from the board? Okay. A first from Director Vasquez, a second? Okay. Second from Director Bishop. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. Great. Next, we will move on to manager's report. Willie.
All right. Thank you. It's been a wonderful spring. A month or so ago, we thought, we had a great snowpack, and there was a bunch of concern about flooding in the San Joaquin Valley. And of course, there was some flooding in the San Joaquin Valley, but many thought that it could be worse if we had, some heat events the last month or 6 weeks. But we've been lucky in California. I think this El Nino situation has caused the jet stream to shift and the ocean temperatures to shift. And it's been moderate temperatures this spring. I mean, I don't think we've had a day over 100 degrees, and we had a couple minor what you would call heat waves in relative terms in the high 90s this spring, but nothing significant. So that's good for the snowpack. It's good for the San Joaquin flooding impacts. It's also good for us and how we manage New Bullard's Barn. We actually ramped down spill on the 11th to 0 spill, and that means 0 excess water leaving the reservoir that's not going through the generator. So spill could be spill over the spillway or water discharged out of the low-level outlet. And what that means is that allows us to continue to manage the slower than what could have been snow melt due to the mild temperatures. However, there's a corresponding impact, and Curtis touched on it slightly, and that is power prices. And when you have mild weather like this, you don't have a significant demand from air conditioning yet this year, and you have a lot of generation from primarily hydro, because everyone has water, not just us. So you get, I'll just call them depressed prices. In 2017, we saw significantly negative prices. I did report, I think at the last board meeting, we did have 2 Sundays this year where we had negative prices, but Sunday's a general light, demand day, and we had some mild Sundays a month or so ago, and we saw some negative prices. But all in all, even in the mild springtime, we've had decent power prices, so we had a net positive on a daily basis, and so our revenue for May and June will be good. And we have an ample water supply for water deliveries for our irrigators and also for power generation for the peak summertime. And so if there is a significant heat wave between now and let's say the end of the summer season, we do have ample water to generate with and capture that opportunity. So all in all, the spring has been good. The snow melt is tapering off. The reservoir is full. Things are going well. Narrows 1 is currently under annual maintenance outage. It's due to be back at the end of the month on June 30th. The mini hydro is still is out of service due to the exciter repair that's needed. That's basically it from an operations standpoint. We can move on to the more administrative stuff. I'd like to welcome Sammy Null. I think she just walked out though. Okay, truly a meeting. So Sammy Null is our new water resources manager. She'll be working for Ryan McNally. She started last week. She comes from DWR. Very impressive resume, very impressive work history at Department of Water Resources. She'll help Ryan out in this area that you just saw Curtis present on and flood risk reduction and water resources. So we're happy to have Sammy on board. In the communications area, the Territorial Dispatch and Appeal Democrat gave us a shout out for our sponsorship of the Marysville Fiesta. Our forecast coordinated operations program was highlighted in the Chico Enterprise Record as part of a story about water levels at Orville. A long-awaited story in the New York Times Magazine is expected to be online this week, with the print version coming out in the insert in Sunday's New York Times. We'll share that as soon as it's available. As a reminder, we gave a tour of Bullards to a reporter with the Times, who was here to talk about the challenges of managing water in a year like this, our forecast-informed reservoir operations efforts, and the plans for the Ark Spillway. In community relations, this week we have a booth at the Celebration of Trails event in Nevada City, a Bear Yuba Land Trust sponsorship. We are sponsoring the Yuba-Sutter Fair this weekend, as well as the Junior Livestock Awards. And we will have signed on again to sponsor the 4th of July fireworks show. And lastly, and very impressively, I want to congratulate the communications team on winning the Silver Anvil. I'm going a little bit off script here, but this is a big time award. Our communications team, Dee Dee, Bonnie, and Alex flew back to New York to, they knew they were getting an award. They didn't know if they were going to get 3rd place, 2nd place, or 1st place in their category, but they knew they were getting an award. And I think it was 2 Thursdays ago, I got a text late at night with a picture of them holding the 1st place Silver Anvil Award in their category. I'll go ahead and read the actual write-up that Dee Dee created here, but this is a big deal. They're amongst some of the biggest PR firms in the country, and it's an honor to be a part of that. And I'll just remind you that the story that they won the award for was the 25th anniversary of the 1997 flood. So not only did we win an award and get credit for our PR work, but it was directly related to the agency's core mission of flood risk reduction. And although we are celebrating an unfortunate situation, the 1997 flood, it just goes to show that we think about it. We're putting our investments in those priorities and continue to mitigate flood risk reduction in the area, but also talk about it, talk about what happened, and create content out there for people to digest and really understand what the agency does. But let me read Dee Dee's paragraph just because I basically said most of it, but she will give her a little credit here. I want to share that Yuba Water Agency has received a Silver Anvil, the highest award given by the Public Relations Society of America for strategic campaigns, for our campaign commemorating 25 years since the New Year's flood of 1997 in Yuba County. More than 700 entries were considered for this year's National Anvil Awards, with just 38 out of 700 Silver Anvil Award winners. Our communication team was there, among the likes of some of the most prestigious PR firms in the world. The award is a huge honor for our team and the agency. Thanks, Dee Dee and team, and congratulations. I'm surprised the award isn't here in front of us. I asked her when she got back, I said, so how was your speech? And she said, oh, they didn't let us give a speech. So I said, good, because that would have been something else to watch Dee Dee stand up in front of all those people and talk about this thing. That's all I have. Our next meetings are on July 18th. We have a regular board meeting and an ABP committee meeting. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? The manager's report? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to director's reports. We'll start with Director Bishop today. Okay. Director Matthews?
I had something, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, if you remember, we can circle back at the end. So Director Messick?
Yeah, I have a few things. First off, I'd like to thank us for sponsoring the fair and the Junior Livestock Auction Awards. I'm going to be there to present the awards for the Junior Livestock Auction. So if anybody else wants to join me, it's Sunday morning to do that. I'm camped there at the fair all week. So if you guys are at the fair, give me a shout out and come by. I coordinated a little brisket cook-off Friday night amongst our camp group, and Director Fear is graciously donated to be a judge for the brisket cook-off. So I knew I could, yeah. I knew he will work for food, so I knew I could lure him over there with letting him be a judge. And then I'd also like to ask that if we could adjourn the meeting in memory of Gene Harris, which is a longtime farmer and member of Aqua and the father-in-law of Kim Biggs. He's a constituent of mine in Loma Rica and very active in the Loma Rica fire up there.
Okay, sure. So Director Matthews, looks like you remember.
Yes, safety and the idea that when you go to work in the morning, you get to come home. And one of our directors drives to Sacramento, and some speeding guy cutting in and out of traffic got him in a wreck. Our manager also drives to Sacramento many, many days of the week for all of these meetings. And I'd like to propose an unwritten policy that when we get new vehicles for him, that we encourage him to get a full-size Suburban. These type of tail enders or being hit by somebody else, that's the safest vehicle to be in. And it is an unwritten policy. I would encourage all of us to support it.
But we at least need to make sure he has good brakes in his vehicle.
Thank you, Director Matthews. Director Fuhr?
Congrats, Dee Dee, on the Silver Anvil. I would like to also commend Jackie. She's babysitting and taking away around her intern and getting them trained up right. That's awesome. She's working on the Olivehurst Little League sprinklers, which I greatly appreciate. So her civic duties check marks are all happening. Curtis, I'll talk to you afterwards. I still have lots of questions about the budget. It just makes me look dumb if I ask them all from up here. So I'll get back to you. And then Supervisor Messick, in addition to bribing me with brisket, has prevailed upon me the importance and value, and along with Wayne, of the farmers on here. So I just wanted to tell you, the farmer insight and input has made me understand why and how we spread out our money funding and our projects, and I really do appreciate their additional insights for the board.
No. Thank you. Director Blazer?
Not too much, but I was driving around Lake Oroville over the weekend, and when you look across the lake to the dam, it looks like an infinity pool. It's pretty impressive.
Well, that wasn't very good for him a couple of years ago.
No.
And Director Vasquez?
Branch Hill's having a celebration of life somewhere over the rainbow on Friday, June 30th from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Brick. And one of the unsung heroes of the local area, and amazing pilot. And let's see, I got to speak with a veteran service officer statewide 5-day training that we did at that they're doing at Hard Rock. And so Hard Rock's getting some of the statewide business, and it was a pleasure. Got to meet a bunch of veterans. That's it.
Thank you. And the only thing I have is just a congratulations to the communications team. That's super exciting, and also welcome to our new intern. That's it. So with that, we do have a closed session item as listed on the agenda. We will take about a 10-minute break before we start closed session, and then we'll move into closed session. So thanks, everyone.
Recording stop.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com. Our live stream this morning is brought to you in part by the Marysville Peach Festival, a City of Marysville event that is happening Friday, July 14th and Saturday, July 15th in historic downtown Marysville. This is the 23rd annual event. We'll be doing live streaming from there and keeping you up to date on what's happening. And we hope the weather is nice and cooperative. It would be nice if it's like this. We're supposed to have weather similar to this through the rest of the week. And we hope that you are able to make it to the Peach Festival. I'm Ted Langdell, and coming up a little later here on Yuba-Sutter.live, we have quite a few cool things. We've got the two meetings, actually. The 6 o'clock Marysville City Council meeting that is going on from Marysville City Hall at 6 o'clock tonight. That's the regular meeting, and it'll be the last meeting that they have before there's not going to be one on July 4th, as you may have heard Willie or Gary Bradford make a notice about for Yuba Water Agency, but also for the other organizations. Why? Because the next Tuesday meeting for these groups would fall on July 4th, which is Independence Day. So they are not meeting. They will have meetings on the 18th. Is it the 18th? Let's check the date here. Next regular meeting for Yuba Water Agency and for Marysville City Council and Yuba City Council will be Tuesday, July 18th. So tonight we have the last meeting of June, the last meeting of spring, 6 p.m. Marysville City Council meeting, regular meeting, that's one stream, and then a separate stream for the 6 o'clock Yuba City Council regular meeting that is coming up. And again, our meetings brought to you in part by, or presented by, I should say, Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, and we are getting support for our broadcasts as well from the Peach Festival, the City of Marysville's Peach Festival, coming up in July, right about a month from now. Anyway, you are also invited to take a sip of Bridge Coffee.